I wish to bring you greetings from you, Asiel family. I don't see you different than I see myself. I came to Israel 50 years ago as a young man, his age, with his father and his mother, which you met earlier. My vision was that the whole house of Israel would be gathered back to this land just like our forefathers Abraham predicted in Bereshit, in the 15th chapter, the 12th verse, that he said, know of a surety that thy seed would be in a strange land that is not theirs, and they shall serve them and afflict them for 400 years. And afterwards, I will bring them back to the land of their fathers. Now, I know the world was saying that because our skins were darker, and that the initial descendants of Israel coming out of Europe were like us, that we were different people. But just to give you a little history, we've always felt and known that we were Jews in America. And we were disconnected from most of the family. But if you do any research, you'll find that the African Hebrew in America was identified in the 1600s in Boston, Massachusetts. So our history is long and deep. We were scattered there. Most people only think of the Egyptian captivity as the captivity of Israel in strange lands. So when we begin to awaken spiritually, there was a German Hebrew philosopher by the name of Oscar Goldberg, who was born in 1885 in Berlin, Germany. And he wrote a book called The Reality of the Hebrews. And in it he was saying that of all of the biological people on the planet, the Jews/Hebrews, God was the most powerful of all the people. In fact, Yahweh Kadosh is our center. Our whole being is to do that which is his will. So we became, since 70 AD, scattered throughout the world. And because most people didn't want to recognize that Israel was landlocked to Africa, Egypt, the writers of the war during the Middle East coined this area of the planet the Middle East. The Middle East of what? Israel and Egypt was landlocked until they dug the Suez Canal. When they dug the Suez Canal, they disconnected Israel from the continent of Africa, they thought. But Africa is not just a landmass, it's a people. And when you go back historically in the history of the people of this land, you'll find that when the Romans came and came from Tiberias all the way down to Judea, they pushed us into Africa. So we went to Egypt, Morocco, Tunisia. All of these places are Northeast Africa. Because nobody was telling the truth about who the people of the book were and are. It got distorted. But those of you who have read the Torah and read the history of us as a people, you'll find that the prophecy said that we would be scattered to the ends of the earth. When you look in Deuteronomy, you'll find that after we were scattered, the prophecy said we would be brought back to this land. Well, in 1895, Theodor Herzl in Basel, Switzerland, started the Zionist movement, the political Zionism. And he began to organize among the Jews scattered in Europe that it was time to begin to develop a homeland so that we would return back to Zion. I don't need to tell anybody about World War II. They know the history of what happened to us in Europe, and it's not a nice story. But most of us don't know the history of what happened to us in America. It looked like we were just slaves in America, but we weren't. We were fulfilling the prophecies that we had to undergo, that chastisement for turning away from the Holy One of Israel. And because of that, we experienced in America a terrible experience, worse than the captivity in Egypt for that 430 years. When the Messiah, when the Creator sent the deliverer of Moshe to begin to bring us out of ancient Egypt into the Promised Land. You fast forward and you come up to the 19th and the 20th century. The writer Oscar Goldberg, the German Hebrew religious philosopher, wrote, when you see the African American male and female returning back to Zion, it would be the beginning of the Messianic age. Now, you got to remember, a few years out of captivity in America, when Theodor Herzl had his vision in 1895, there was an African Hebrew in America named Mason, Charles Mason, who had the same epiphany in the U.S. And he began to teach that we were the descendants of the children of Israel in the state of Mississippi. And now it's 6.5 million of those who believe that. And then it moved up to New York and became the Black Jews of Harlem. So you begin to look back. Now all of this is documented in writings that you can find. This is not my opinion. This is scholars and historians and geographers who've all documented this. So that as we begin to get to know each other again, there's solid history to validate why we're all being brought back to Israel. To be that people again that will show the world how to live and how to get power with the God of Israel again. And so it's no accident that in 1936 in Nazi Germany, when Hitler was boasting about the supremacy of the Aryan race and was anti-Jewish and anti-anything righteous from our point of view, a group of Chicagoans, particularly Jesse Owens, and a runner named Ralph Bunche beat the Nazi Germany at the Olympics in 1936 to prove that the Jew was the strong one. Even though you didn't know we were Jews, and even though they didn't know we were Jews, the Jews broke the back of the arrogance of the Nazi regime in 1936 at the Olympics. Now the reason I tell you that, You don't know that Joe Louis, the heavyweight champion of the world, defeated the German Nazi Max Snelling in the boxing ring. So all these things look like they were sports. They were proof that you were the good people. And God, with his sense of humor, hid us in black skin so that the world wouldn't know that we were you at the same time. So with this kind of championship in our DNA, we fast forward up to the 60s. And we see the civil rights movement in the United States. Martin Luther King and the rabbis began to organize for justice in America. Not just for black people, but for women, for the Jews, for all of those minorities that were not getting justice in America. And they formed a coalition and began to bring down the walls of segregation in the United States. I'm a young man during those days. I'm angry and I'm bitter. And my desire was to be a lawyer, because I needed to understand law. But the law that I needed to really study was the law of the Torah, to understand how a just God would permit his people to undergo such cruelty. And when I realized what happened, I then shifted from studying the Roman law of Jewish prudence to the spiritual law of how to get power back to our people. And so I began to study in the U.S. I was working with Jewish businessmen. I was working with the Jewish community in Chicago, and we became a coalition. I began to read the history of the Jewish people, and it paralleled with the history of us in America. And I began to see the cross-fertilization, the cross-pollination, that everywhere we were, there was always Jewish businessmen connected to us, or Jewish trainers, or Jewish educators, or Jewish scholars, or Jewish doctors, or Jewish lawyers. We had a connection in America to this very day that's unprecedented. And so during the 60s, as Dr. King was pushing for civil rights, Israel was coming into its own as a nation. And so in 1948, in New York, at the United Nations, a decision was made to give a homeland to the Jewish people who had been violated for the last 2,000 years. And it was an African-American named Ralph Bunche, who was an undersecretary at the UN, an African-American scholar who was one of the first African men to graduate from Harvard University. So he was not just slouch, and he looked like us, light skin, wavy hair, but he was an African Hebrew. Now, I give you this little background to let you know we fast forward now. And the vision comes to Ben-Ami and others in America that it was time now for us to begin to return back to Zion. So I was part of a group that went to the United Nations and said that they failed to really do the thorough research that would validate our right to be part of the ingathering of Israel. We were given an opportunity to begin to speak to the Social Economic Committee of the United Nations so that they would begin to look at the facts of the matter. But before that was completed, the Spirit had us then get on a plane, leave America, and come first to Liberia, where we went to West Africa to cleanse ourselves of all of the negative things that we had learned in America and that we had begun to forget as God's people. Because we were in the ghettos of America, we were in all kinds of situations. And so we went to Liberia and spent 2.5 years in the bush, alone from everybody. And there we began to study Torah. There we began to make our prayers. There we began to petition the Creator to help us and guide us. You got to remember now, we just youngsters, most of us, in our 20s. But we believed that we had a destiny in this land. And so we spent 2.5 years in Monrovia, in Liberia, 110 miles outside of Monrovia, living in tents and learning how to become a people again, a people of God. And so what we did, we sent emissaries up to Israel in the form of Menami and Prince Keskiahu. Prince Keskiahu went to Rosh Hashanah, to the kibbutz there, and spent a year there to learn the language, to learn the customs of Israel. I was in America still petitioning politically, because I knew that without political support and people understanding national and international, nothing could take place. So in 1968, 69, we came to Israel. One family arrived in the city of Arad, and there we began our destiny, reconnecting with the land, the language, and the culture. Now, when we first came into Israel, they didn't know what to do with us. We arrived at Ben Gurion Airport, and they said, "Who are you?" We said, "We are returning home." "Home from where?" So we were scattered like you. We said, instead of running to Europe, we got chased down to Africa. And we've been hiding in Africa for 2,000 years. And it sounded crazy. But you've been running in Europe for 2,000 years. That don't sound crazy. Everywhere we went, we were being chased and hunted down and identified with what we could conceal, that in our DNA was the Holy One of Israel keeping us strong. And no matter what you went through over in Europe, or we went through over in America, we never forgot Zion. We never gave it up. They tried to put us in the Christian church. They tried to put us in this church. They tried to take it out of us, just like they did in Europe. They tried to say, we're going to make you Catholics. We're going to make you Methodists. We're going to make you Russian. We're going to make you German. But in your heart, you took all of that and stayed the people of God. And we did the same thing. Because when they realized we started producing not just PhDs, we discovered open heart surgery. We discovered blood plasma. We discovered the cotton gin. All of these things were made by the people of God, all of these creations. And they realized that they had a special people in their midst. Even though they were calling us Cushi and Negro or black or colored, they knew that the minds that we had were not Negro and colored and stupid. And so the people began to realize that this is a different kind of people. So when you go back to Abraham Lincoln talking about freeing the slaves, not really. He was an instrument that the Holy One of Israel used to fulfill his will, that the yoke of captivity was broken by him. But he told the world that he didn't do it because of us. He did it to keep the union together. And decisions were made all throughout the world, not because they loved us, because God was with us, no matter whether you was in South America, whether you was in South Africa, whether you was in Germany or England. We never stopped serving the Holy Land of Israel. So when we came in 1969 here to Israel, they said, well, we don't know if you're really Jewish or not, so what we're going to do is convert you. I said, well, how are you going to convert me to what I already am? We didn't know them and they didn't know us, but we knew that if you had to validate me as being who I am, I'm not really who I am then. But I don't have a problem with going through the process, but just because you came through the door first, that don't mean that you're better than me. That doesn't mean that you're smarter than me, that God is with you more than me. Because if you look at any line, and if you're in the line to get in the theater, and you already got a ticket, the person that gets in there first got to wait till the show starts anyway. It don't start because they go in there first. Only when everybody that's supposed to get in does the theater start. And so even though we've been coming into Israel since 48, God hadn't completed the ingathering of all of his people. And it looked like we were the last ones to come in. But that wasn't true. In 1975 at the United Nations, the UN voted to equate Zionism with racism. 1975. I'm in New York at that time. And so a reporter comes up to me and asks me, are you a Zionist? I said, of course. I said, but there are two kinds of Zionism, and you need to understand both of them. There's political Zionism that was started by Theodore Herzl in 1895, and then prophetic Zionism that was started by the prophets, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, thousands of years ago, who predicted what is taking place today would happen. And people were confused because they didn't know how to understand the prophecies. They just knew it wasn't them. But those who knew it was them never stopped worshiping, never stopped praying, never stopped believing. So next year, Yerushalayim was maybe a statement to the world, but it was in our hearts. Yerushalayim. If I forget ye, O Yerushalayim, let my right hand forget its coming, my tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth. Yes. If I don't hold Jerusalem above my cheek joint. Yes. I know that's right. And that's the way we felt. That's right. And we didn't compromise. You could call me nigger, cushy, I didn't care. The Holy One of Israel was inside of me. And I knew it. And I'm saying to us tonight, as family now, all right, we're not here as Cushing from Dimona. We're here as your family that was scattered to other parts of the earth, and we bring back gifts. We don't come begging. We come back with the part of the plan that God gave us all to do. Amen. And I'm saying, what we got to understand, this is a great time. Because who would have believed after World War II that there would be an Israel? It looked like Hitler had done his job. It looked like Europe had done their job. Wasn't true. Wasn't true. Wasn't true. Because now here we are. A power in this earth. Just 6 million of us. In this little piece of land. 10,800 kilometers that the UN mandated, that we turned that piece of real estate into what the U.S. Congress said in 1994 about Dimona. It said, a miracle in the desert. That's right. You can read it. 150 U.S. congressmen said the Dimona community, I went and brought up only Holocaust survivor in the U.S. Congress, Tom Lantos, and his wife Annette, to Dimona. And when she heard me speak in the U.S. Congress, she walked up to me and said, I've never heard anybody speak with such passion and love for Israel and the Jewish people. I don't know you, but I want to know you. And to the time that Tom Lantos died, I was his friend. Now, the reason that this is important to me and why, by the way, I just came from out of Soda Breeze a few days ago because my son was talking to me on the telephone and he was telling me that he had some opportunities to speak to some families to know who the Limona people are. I wasn't planning on coming in now because we're doing some things in America that would keep me there. But I knew that I needed to be here. And I'm so happy to be here. So let me first thank you for opening up your home for us and your hearts for us and your lives for us, because I feel absolutely at home. I don't feel like I'm in some stranger's home. So I just want you to know how much I appreciate, how much we appreciate being here with you to celebrate Sukkot. Now this is a real gathering. You had no idea you was going to gather me up in here and put me in the Sukkot with you, But I'm here to say Yah has blessed us to come back together. So as I close out my portion of this, but I want you to begin to know tonight that you've got brothers and sisters that you haven't met, people in your family that you haven't met, but love you and love this country and will fight with everything they got to make sure. I brought senators to Israel. I brought congressmen to Israel. I brought mayors to Israel. I hosted the mayor of Tiberias in Atlanta and brought him and his delegation from Tiberias so that the Americans could see it. I brought Martin Luther King III to Israel so that he could see what his father spoke about in 1968 before he was murdered. The night before, if you can pull up that speech sometime, you'll see that he said, longevity has its place. But it really don't matter to me now. For God has allowed me to live long enough to be taken up to the mountaintop. And he said, and I've looked over and seen the promised land. He said, I may not get there with you, but we as a people will get to the promised land. The next day he was murdered. The next week, we were on our way to Israel from Liberia. That happened in April of 68. In May of 68, we landed in Israel for the first time in 2,000 years. And nobody believed that God would keep his word and bring his people back. All of us. So I'm saying to you that this ingathering for me is very special, because I see nothing but blessings coming for us as a people. I see nothing but power given back to us. I met with all of the prime ministers for the last 8 prime ministers. From Benjamin Netanyahu, when I brought delegations over. I got with President Perez. We had private meetings. I brought Winnie Mandela up from South Africa so that the Mandelas would know. Most people don't know that the Mandelas trace their roots back here. And those who know the history of the Limba tribe know that the DNA of the Limba tribe in South Africa is as strong as any other group of people with the Levitical gene of the Levites. So I'm just saying, it's all coming back together. And so I want to say, in my statement of closing out, to Yair how much I appreciate him getting out front with the meeting food, so that you know the rabbi who was pre-state Israel chief rabbi, Rabbi Hu, talked about that the Israelites, the Israelis, had to become deacons if they were going to receive the real power of the Holy One of Israel. And when we invited Minister Saransky to UCLA in 2003, 2004, he realized that it was because when we first came in, he said to the audience, nobody knew us. He said, but then they began to listen to the music that we were singing, and they realized that this music resonated with their soul. And then when they began to understand the words that we were singing, they knew it was something different. So I'm saying to you, all of this has been happening in these 50 years. So I'm an advocate. I know all of the ambassadors in Washington, D.C. I worked for Mashab out of the foreign ministry down in Africa. I brought African presidents up here so that they would understand how to support country, state, the people of Israel. So I just wanted to give you just a little overview of how we are connected, not just sitting down in Dimona, here's a nuclear reactor, but we're the real secret weapon that Israel has developed down in Dimona. And we're going to explode all over the world with truth so that the people of this planet Earth will know that the God of Israel is with this country and nation. So I'm going to stop right here and pass it on back to you. And hallelujah! All right.